Good morning, traders. Welcome to the live session. This is Friday, August 29th. Kind of bad timing, actually, to start a live trading session. You can see we're kind of in consolidation here. I'm waiting for A-plus setups today, but wanted to just continue to record these every week when I can. I have already taken one trade today, but wasn't able to record that. So we're gonna get into it a little bit. I might get into a little bit more background of what I'm looking for in my A plus setup. But I do have a complete guide out there, and then I'm working on a 4-part series that goes over more on a basic level all the way through to the deeper level. So as of right now, though, just kind of stalking a trade here, seeing where the market goes. You can see we've got volume drying up here. This is not a great sign as far as looking for the proper setup, but there's still a little bit of movement here. Maybe we could find something. So before we get too deep into this, and let me kind of zoom out a little, show you the 15-minute time frame, what this looks like. Sorry, I've got this sweep first thing going on here. It's another indicator I'm working on, and that was really noisy. So this is a 15-minute time frame here. You can see we've got, have a look at the volume here. Whoa, not bad. So volume looks like it's actually ramping down here on the 15-minute as well. We are at a key level here. Looks like it has tapped this level a few times. Yeah, as we're going back through here, bounce. We've got a bounce in this zone here, 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 a definite bounce. Here we've got another bounce. So it looks like a significant level it's trailed down to. And you can see my zones drawing here is actually updated a little bit in this new indicator. This is version 13.4. So if it's a darker color, what I'm using is just the transparency, the opacity, if you will, of the color. So if it's this pretty transparent green, that means it's only applicable on this 15-minute time frame. As I get back down into the 1-minute time frame, you can now see how much darker these get. So this is my lightest pink here is the 1-minute time frame. Little bit darker is my 5-minute time frame. Then down here where you see it's almost a complete color, it's not really opaque at all. That is my 15-minute time frame. So that means this level is lined up on the 1, because it's super transparent, right? All the way through the 15. This is 1-minute time frame here, 1-minute time frame here. As we scroll down, this one is 1, 5, and 15, similar to up here. But yeah, just a lot of consolidation in here. We're moving what, anywhere from, right now we're looking at levels of 6,471, and it's bouncing off of 64, 64. That's not great. It's just not enough movement in there. And you can see I haven't had much trigger from my indicators. This is triggering B setups right now as well, but I really am hoping for an A setup as we get a little bit more volume coming in. A lot of times around the noon time frame, that's when we get a little bit of an uptick in volume. Right now it does not look good. I'm going to zoom back in here on my volume on the 1-minute time frame because it is not matching the 15-minute. We're not up into the 2000s, right? Shrink this panel down just a little bit. So with that said, why don't I dive in a little bit to what I'm looking for here in this setup. So an A-plus setup for me has a very specific checklist that I like to stay disciplined and look for. That is the divergence setup. So a valid bullish or bearish divergence pattern must be identified within the confirmation window. My indicator right now is set to the default, which is 10 bars back. That's the look back period. So it's looking for any divergence within the last 10 bars. That's the initial warning that the trend is losing momentum. Now, right now, there doesn't seem to be enough momentum to move it enough to have a divergence. You can see we had one back up here, a little bit higher. I won't scroll over there right now, but second condition is the stochastic setup. So that is at least one of the two slow stochastics, 3 and 4, down here. And I'll show these. Again, I'm total transparency here. I'm not trying to hide anything. Yes, I have an indicator, but you should be able to set up your chart very similar to what I do without needing an indicator at all. Indicator definitely makes life easier. So you've got a 40 and a 4 on this third stochastic, and this one is a 60 and a 10 on the fourth stochastic. I need those levels to get into either overbought or oversold depending on which one I'm looking for, right? They need to get into those extreme zones within that same 10 bar confirmation window. I'm going to keep referring back to that confirmation window. The VWAP setup, it must be on the correct side of the VWAP to favor a reversion to the mean, right? So for a buy signal, I need that price to be below the VWAP, and that VWAP acts as a magnet and draws price up into it. Same for the sell signal. It needs to be above the VWAP, and it will draw it down. So I use the VWAP that way, not necessarily for confirmation, but that a magnet should be pulling it up or down depending on which direction I'm looking to go. What's nice about the 1 minute time frame and the scalping strategy is I don't have to come in with a super big bias of my direction. If it looks like, and definitely as you guys saw here, as we zoom out, it is definitely on a downtrend today. We're down about, what are we down overall? Almost 1% on MES. We're 1.35% on MNQ. So this is where you do tend to see volume dry up because people are now realizing, hey, this market's moving too much. I want out. And they start pulling out. Institutional money that still moves the market a lot, though, they've still got transactions they need to perform. So I'm hoping that'll bring volume back up a little bit. But they do tend to die off as far as their transactions after about 11 o'clock historically. So that's the other condition I'm looking for. Third condition is that VWAP, right? If for a buy signal, it must be below. For a sell signal, it must be above. And then we have the EMA break is my final entry trigger. This is the final event that fires the signal on my indicator, and it is the one that tells me I'm now good to enter. The price must cross and close over the 9 EMA that I have here. That is the yellowish orange line that you see going throughout these candles here. That's the 9 EMA. This action only generates a signal if the first three conditions, setup conditions, are already true. So again, you're still looking in that confirmation window, the 10 bars. This strict 4-part checklist is why an A-grade signal is pretty rare, and it just makes it a much higher probability event. For a B setup scenario, just to give you an idea, because we're not seeing much movement here in the market anyway, so I can kind of get into a little bit more of the where I differentiate a B setup versus an A setup. But as you can imagine, I don't have to meet all of those conditions for a B setup, right? All 4 have to be checked for an A grade setup. For a B grade, it could be a mix and match of at least 3. So it could be a divergence was recently identified. It could be the slow stochastics, maybe just the third or the fourth. I actually have that built into my indicator to look for, or or I can change that to an and, meaning the third stochastic can be overbought or oversold, but the fourth doesn't have to be. If I switch it to and, both of them have to be. That's my true A plus setup. But the price could be on the wrong side of the VWAP. Maybe that condition doesn't need to be met. So the interpretation there would be strong momentum-based reversal signal, but it's not a classic mean reversion trade, which means it's riskier. Simple as that. Scenario 2, so that's scenario 1 on my B grade setup I would call divergence and stochastics. Those are my two primary focuses in that B setup. Scenario 2 for a B setup would be divergence and VWAP. So a divergence has been identified and the price is on the correct side of the VWAP. The slow stochastics maybe not be in extreme overbought or oversold zones. And so my interpretation is a good signal that momentum is fading near that average price, but it lacks the confirmation that the market is truly overextended. Kind of goes back to my part 1 of the 4-part series where I talk about the planes analogy. That means the B-2 bomber is not even overhead. We don't know what he's doing yet. He may not even have his orders yet. So if you're not wanting to enter that battle without your B-2 bomber, then don't. Simple as that. Scenario 3, really this is the last one here when I think of a B grade setup. Slow stochastics that were recently overextended. The price is on the correct side of the VWAP, but there is no divergence found. This is a classic overextension and mean reversion setup and a very common type of a reversal signal, but it doesn't have the early warning of fading momentum that divergence provides. So that is why I like the divergence. I typically do scenario 1 or 2 for those. I don't love scenario 3. I don't have to have it, but I find that when I start to get into that territory, I'm over trading. I'm just looking for any conditions to enter, whether it's greed or fear of missing out or whatever that looks like. So those are kind of the setups that I walk through. I don't think I'm going to get an A setup, I'll be honest. Volume is drying up way too much right now. It just does not look good. So we've got a little bit more movement here. I'm going to do a fib retracement from the top and see what this looks like. Just tools that I'm using here to help determine what's going on in the market. I don't typically, I have learned Fibonacci. I like Fibonacci levels. I like them to pay attention to something like this. You can see that it's not moving much over the last 20 bars between that 1 and the 0.768. So it lets me know what levels to look for, but it's not great as far as that goes, right? If you're dragging this from the top here to that bottom level, it just doesn't have much movement. I don't use Fibonacci's for entry exits, things like that. I've gotten away from that. But still love and respect the Fibonacci levels. I think they're great. Just don't need that much noise going on. I think I have enough going on my charts already. We're going to continue to watch this here, see what we get, but if volume doesn't tick up a little bit, I'll probably leave this video as is and at least describe to you my checklist for those A and B setups, and we can get into that maybe on another day. Monday is a holiday, so I expect that to have an impact already on volume. There's just going to be less trading leading into a holiday weekend. And then Monday, of course, the markets are going to be closed for the New York session. I don't typically trade the London and Asian sessions. I do think there's a lot of manipulation in those sessions. The Asian session early on, for me, that's midnight, does have a little bit of momentum. It's got some volume that comes into play. but I'm not typically trading at midnight. I'd rather get up in the morning, and for me, the New York Open, that's 6:30. 7:30 really is the full New York Open. But at 8:30 New York time, that momentum starts to come into the market. In fact, if we back up here, you can see a B setting up here. Just not enough volume to interest me. So I wonder if I can take you back testing a little bit, and we'll look for an A plus entry here. But yeah, if we're backing up, and I do have my UTC set to New York time zone, so this is appropriately the New York session. But you can see at 8:30 we start to get an uptick in volume, so much so that it moves this bar more than we've moved in the last several hours, maybe an hour. Not quite. Yeah, that bar is not quite that big, but you get my point. Big spike in volume as the Asian session closes. The U.S. session starts to take over. But from there, we've really just fallen off. I know NVIDIA had their earnings late Wednesday, and they kind of came into play for a little bit more volume Thursday. Friday seems like it's kind of dried up. Yeah, we had some decent ones, and you can see some of my trades in here. I took this trade just to the top candle. Could have stayed in a little bit longer there. But yeah, I've done okay. Let me back up here. I'll just scroll back and try to find some better divergence lines. We're just gonna look at a replay of yesterday so that you guys can get an idea of what this actually looks like when there's some movement, some momentum in the market, because there's just not right now. So again, I'm going back to this 8:30 time frame, right? 8:30 New York time, there is a spike in volume that comes in. And yes, it doesn't look like much on my volume indicator here, but you can see how much the price moves. Comes up into this 1 and 5 minute level. That's not a full 15 because it's not, see how solid this green is. So that's a 1, 5, and 15. You can barely see the 1 there. Let me zoom in a little bit more to give it. So you've got the very opaque transparency there, barely visible green. That's the 1 minute, 5 minute, 15 minute. So this level is going to be key for us as we zoom out a little. VWAP is way below price action right now. And then we've got a 1 and a 5 minute level up here. I think I said 15 earlier. My apologies. That's 1 and 5. 15 is where it gets really darker. So let's go ahead and play this through. We're at 9 o'clock. I'm going to skip just a little bit here so that we can kind of get to the actual open in that 9:30 time frame. We'll take you through a more normal day here for me. Let's slow this down. We'll pause it. You do see that I got this is a B condition indicator. It does look like it came up here. It's not got divergence, as you can tell. I don't see any divergence lines coming into play yet. Let me just check my settings on my indicator as well. You guys can kind of get an idea of what this looks like. So I've got my 1 minute support and resistance zone, my 5 minute zone, and my 15 minute zone, right? And this is the number of bars I'm looking back at. Zone thickness. Got my buy exit signals, buy sell and exit signals, excuse me. It is supposed to be showing divergence lines. Again, we're looking for a minimum setup of B. I'll still show you the Bs, but I really want to focus on an A setup. I do have my stochastic signal exit, and then I'm looking at my ATR for stop and profit levels, okay? So this is a 14 length ATR, and I've got a 1.5 multiplier, so it knows my stop loss is supposed to be 1.5 compared to 3 for my take profit. Gives me a simple 2-to-1 ratio. I don't always take those. Again, I've talked to you guys about that. I don't focus a lot on that risk to reward ratio. I focus more on capital preservation. I think that's the important thing to focus on. Got my confirmation EMA there, the 9 EMA, and then you can see even inside of the indicator here, I am still looking at these stochastic levels. I like the visual of seeing those levels though. It lets me know when I'm in and when I'm not. I don't have my confirmation EMA marked here. I'll go ahead and mark it. It doubles up that EMA line because I'm pulling it from this QRI ICT indicator that I'm also playing with. But it darkens it, so maybe better visual for you guys. I've got my VWAP again, that is the blue bar. I'm looking for my A setup here, but you can see I've got a little bit of a darker green for my B grade, and it is a smaller triangle. A on the sell side again is a darker red, or a brighter red, and a darker red for the B grade setup. Again, my exit long and short here, my bullish divergence lines above and below. I'll leave it at that. Gives you a good idea of what I've got going on in this indicator. So we've got volume ticking up. I'm going to shrink this down a little bit because as soon as this happens, I think it's going to move pretty good. Yes, we had a B set up here. Okay, we're going to leave that as is. I'm going to go into some paper trading. So let me log out of my Trade-Evade account here, because I do want to show you what this actually looks like as we're taking a trade. And I'll go ahead and set these. It's probably going to be more like 2060. That's a 3-to-1. It'll be somewhere in that range is my guess, what I'd be looking for. So we're coming down into, I'm gonna pause it there. We're coming down into oversold territory, right? We're oversold here on the first, second, and third stochastic. This fourth stochastic still in the range, but it's down there. I mean, we're down to almost the 20 level, just right above it. So that is getting very oversold even on the 5-minute time frame. Now our volume indicator not really telling us that we have that ramp up for a long, and it's neither is it a ramp down. So we're gonna leave it as is. We're gonna keep letting this run. Let's see what it does off of this level that it just pushed right through as I called it out. Okay, so we have our up ramp now. Almost. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more, make this more visible for you guys. So I have a little bit of an up ramp here. The reason I would say not fully is I need a 1, 2, 3 succession in this upward trend. It ticked up a little bit, but then it actually backed off and went back down in volume. Bearish volume, I should say. It's not down, right? It is still a bullish candlestick here, but we don't have a valid entry yet. Yeah, you can see that volume is a clear indicator. It was not a good entry. It was not time to enter here because we don't have that ramp up. It started to, it looked like it, and then this candle hit, and we're not there. On top of the fact that my final confirmation again is I need to be closing above the 9 EMA. We're not there. Okay, I'm gonna stop it there. We are in oversold territory. We have our ramp up. We have our B indicator. I can see why it's a B signal for sure. We don't have divergence here. In fact, I'm a little weirded out that we don't have a single divergence call. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. But we'll keep watching it. I may want to just pull in the Asian session so that it's continuing from the previous day here. So here's your divergence lines, the last divergence it found. Okay. Just wanted to confirm that. We've still got our, I don't know what this is here. Apparently some lines that I drew for a channel yesterday as I was looking at trades. So let's keep this going here. Again, I want to look for that A setup, but that's not a bad setup right there. That's a B entry, but it did go above and close above that 9 EMA. We've got a second B entry, which is usually a pretty good sign. I will take these typically. If I'm looking for A plus setups, great. But if I've got two bullish entry signals, it's probably a good indicator that this is, and I've got ramp up, it's a good indicator that this is gonna move in the right direction. What I don't like, what's pulling against me a little bit, you can see how my look back window now is playing against me. We're almost in overbought territory where this indicator now says this is a B setup. But because it's looking back up to 10 bars, that's technically true. Visually, this is why I like to keep it. I know that's not a good entry because we're in overbought territory up here on the first and second stochastic. Now, the bottom two are staying down there. My hope is that we get a bounce off of the VWAP back down to this level where these now stochastics, these two stochastics come back down here into oversold territory, and then we look for an entry long. Admittedly, this may not always play out where the third and fourth would also come into that same territory. So let's see how this one goes. Okay. It's bouncing around on that VWAP. It's a key level, of course. The VWAP being what it is. It's you're always going to find a little bit of a fight there to determine which direction it wants to go once it encounters that VWAP. Yeah, now all of a sudden we've got some 1.5. This one looks like it might be a 1.5. Could be a 15. Not quite. Okay. Got another B indication there. Yeah. And move along. Volume starting to dry up here a little bit in this almost 10:30 hour, 10:40. Keep moving. Okay, now we have our first bearish. I shouldn't say first. We had some right at the opening, right? So that is our first clear A setup. You see it's the darker triangle, bigger triangle. We had the divergence happen right here at 10:48. We now have a 1, 2, and 3 bearish candles, closes below the 9 EMA. I don't hate that. What I don't love is by the time this EMA closes, this candle closes below the EMA, excuse me, you see where we're at on the stochastics level here as that candle hits. That is at 42. And even this one's down into the 60s. So not great that way. That to me is a clear indicator I still need to stay out. I'm going to bring up the volume profile a little bit too. This is the other thing I don't have for that true A plus setup, and this is where the indicator is going to fail me a little bit. It gives me good things to pay attention to. We are at key levels. We had a divergence. We're back below the 9 EMA. I know now from my indicator to start paying attention, but visually, I know this isn't my true A setup because I don't have that ramp down in volume. I'll let this play. Now I've got a ramp up in volume, and you can see it's staying above that 9 EMA. So I'm not looking for a short right now. Okay, now we've got another A setup because we're still within 10 bars of that divergence happening, right? Makes sense. We are ramping down in volume. This looks like, oh, that's so close. That candle there, I would say closed below the 9 EMA. Just barely. Barely, barely. I like it. I like that that closed below the 9 EMA right after that A setup signal. It's just coming down into off of the overbought territory. And all of these look like they're trending down. Not quite on the 5 minute yet. That trend hasn't happened yet, that slope. But the other three are in good shape, and I've got my ramp down. Now, we're zoomed in pretty good here, so you can see I'm at 64.98, 64.97. Could go down to this level, which is 64.86. Now, that's not a bad trade. That's 10 ticks. We'll take it, right? But I'd like a little bit more movement here, a little bit more volume. This is really close to meeting all of my conditions. I wish it were a little bit more lined up with that divergence happening earlier. But again, this kind of not quite double top, it's actually a little bit more of a liquidity zone if you look. And that's what typically happens in the algorithm, okay? The algorithm of the market is what I mean. The market is set up to manage this institutional money, right? Big money orders come in. It needs to go and hunt those stop losses because it knows it's got a massive amount of volume coming in that it is going to move the price. So it needs to take out some stop losses. It's not true. I think a lot of people get hung up on this idea that like the market is manipulating and your broker's trying to take you to the cleaner. That's just not true. There's way too much going on in the market to me for them to care about us as small fish. They don't care that I'm throwing 10 micros or minis on ES here. They just don't. I'm not even a blip on their radar. They're stop hunting because they know they've got some volume coming in. Now, we don't have as much volume as I'd like, so we're not talking the institutions that hit right at opening. That's why the opening can be so tough because you're going to get caught up in a bunch of movement that is created by people, institutions moving billions of dollars, not just thousands, right? I mean, I'm looking at $250. I'm literally not even a blip. Now, the key here, though, is you can see how many people would be at this level for their stop loss. If they got an indication here, hey, I'm going to take this short at close below the 9 EMA. Sorry, that was a false signal there. We're going to hunt back up a little bit more, get your stop loss, which is right above this bar likely. That's just kind of human nature, right? That's what we do. We're not going to take it clear up to here. That's way too big of a stop loss. Then we can't get the amount of volume, the units that we want. Why can't I? The words suddenly escape me, but you know what I mean. Yeah. So we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna get rid of that bar there. I think I'm gonna go ahead and take this trade, but I'm not sure it's gonna have the momentum I really would look for in a true A+ setup. But I'm gonna go ahead and take this sell signal. Sorry, that's the live market there. That's why that's throwing me an error. My paper trading, I need to go here. And again, I'm going to keep my stop loss pretty tight. If it's going to hunt again and come back up, I fully expect it to hunt my stop loss now. Let's see if we can take it down to this level. That's actually a really fantastic risk to reward. Maybe I'll take it to this level. We're only risking $137 to make $525. I'll take that all day. Since that black bar closed below the 9 EMA, I'm going to risk it a little bit. Let's see what we get here. Definitely moving slow. Doesn't have the momentum. Normally with this strategy, I'm looking for a flush down. It should move pretty quick for my direction. I don't love that black bar, that bullish bar here closed above the 9 EMA. That is a clear indicator to me that I need to get out. And then on top of that, the next candle, as you can see on my stochastic here, my first stochastic, I'm now in overbought territory. So you can hold through that and hope for the best, but in my experience, it does not work out typically. Once this comes back above the 9 EMA, I want out. In fact, I probably would say typically in a live market, I am going to back up here. Shoot. Didn't want to clear my trade. That would be my exit signal right there. I'm now maybe one bar beyond that. So I'll back up here really quick and just show you what this looks like. Because this is not going to be my best trade. And I think that's actually important for you guys to see. So I do have this signal. I'm going to go ahead and sell my 10. I'll put my stop loss up here. My take profits down here. Let this play through. And what I should be looking to do here, if possible, and this one doesn't really, again, doesn't flush down as fast as I'd like. It's 125. This is a little bit harder when I'm in replay because you don't get to watch this candle move in a live view, but typically that is a 1, 2, 3 bearish candlesticks. I'm nearing the VWAP. If I see it starting to run out of momentum from here, I want out. I know I'm in oversold territory down here on my first stochastic, nearly on the second. So I'm going to slow this down even one more because I want to show you what that would typically look like for me in a live market. And then we'll try to find a little bit better trade. So we've got this one now that's pushing back against the 9 EMA. My volume has flipped now in the other direction. This is another clear indicator that I'm not interested in being in this trade anymore. You can see the hook starting to come on this 9 stochastic. I want out. I'm going to take my $62 profit because it's better than nothing. Now, I know from a true back testing perspective, I already know what's going to happen, and so that's not quite fair. But in a live market, I also would not typically let that run against me like I did. Let's see what else we find here. We're going to take a minute because this stochastics need to line back up, right? So I'm going to speed this up a little. See if we can get more volume here. Whoa, there's our volume. That's what I've been looking for. Now let's bring this down in. So we did some big boost to get clear through all those stop losses, whatever you want to call it, at that liquidity sweep. I don't know if that was quite a liquidity sweep, but some good movement nonetheless. I've got a B set up here, and I see why. I do have the ramp down, but you can tell by the time I'm ready to enter now, this closed below the 9 EMA. Great. Now as I come down, and this is what I do, instead of looking left with a lot of this strategy, you do look left for sure to find your volume, your levels, your key support and resistance levels. Those are key for you to understand before you start digging into this. But from there, you're actually looking down. So, okay, I've got my indicator down here. What's my volume looking like? Okay, I've got my ramp down, 1, 2, 3. That looks great. But my volume or my level here on this 9 stochastic is now at 26, maybe a little bit higher, but it's not great at the bottom of that candle. This one is down into 35. Here, we're not quite there, right? We're more in the 50, 60 range. But I don't love that we already went and blew through 2 out of 3 stochastics that I would look for to be just entering below that 80 level. So I'm going to leave this B setup alone. Might have been the best setup I see all day. Yeah, and you can see my indicator there has whoop. We're going to stop that because I want that long. I don't want to see it before I have it happen. But was calling out here. My indicator was really, really good. I don't honestly know how that ATR look back period works so well, but entry here, exit there would have been a great trade. I'm gonna go ahead and throw on a a short to show you what this would have looked like. Let's say you waited until there to enter, and I'm gonna take my stop a little bit above the 9 EMA. Yes, I know that this is the level that it came up to, but if it's breaking the 9 EMA right after this candle, I don't want it anyway. Let it stop me out much faster. I can keep a much tighter stop. But we'll come down to this level here. Looks like about the 64.90. And that's a 3.4 risk to reward ratio right there. Good for, I think I've got 10 lots in here. It's a 5 lot, which is probably a little bit more appropriate. But one of the things I don't love about the short position indicator, by the way, I do like being able to see that risk to reward immediately, the immediate P&L, but it is asking what I'm risking. Well, I don't know. Look at the ticks and tell me what I'm risking. Why is it not calculating that for me? So just an annoyance for me. I think that should just be part of it. If I were to risk 10 lots, $200, 10 ticks, that's probably about right. In fact, I would say that should be about right. 10 ticks, $200, 10 lots, somewhere in that zone. So that means that is a $200 stop loss and a $680 take profit if you took it all the way to the bottom of the indicator. Now this is a quick turnaround, but we're starting to get that ramp up. I don't love where that 5-minute stochastic is, but I'm okay with that as long as it's still in the range. I'm okay. I don't have my ramp up yet, and it was a really fast turnaround. So I'm going to let this one play out a little bit more. I think we're going to get a tick up above here and then a return back down to this level. And my guess is it'll be exactly this level because it's going to go stop hunting, right? It didn't really get a chance to, in fact, I'm going to call this out here. This is one of the things that I'm trying to pay a little bit more attention to, and so I'm just going to call it out now. I'm going to put a GAN box on it. You see this level here of, that is a fair value gap that basically we would think price would come back down to. There's even another one not quite as big up here. Similar, right? So we'll leave it there for now. That gives you guys a good idea of what I'm looking for in my setups. I don't want to belabor this point too much, and I haven't found the perfect setup that I was looking for yesterday. So we'll call it right there. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to continue to release more. I'll continue to call out the whys behind my execution. Hopefully this is making more and more sense as I continue to talk through my theory. Again, spirit of full transparency is what I'm doing here on this channel. I'm not trying to sell anything or really do much of anything other than help traders understand a strategy. This may not be the right strategy for you. You can still come here for some of the psychology, some of the mental aspects that I call out, or even just understanding the market in general and how you can use some of the different things that I use here in your own strategy. Maybe you want to incorporate the 9 EMA. Maybe you're using the VWAP different than me. Great. I'd love to hear about those. I'm always trying to learn more myself. If you use the VWAP differently than me, let me know in the comments. Thanks, guys.